Hi, I'm Mr. Pink, otherwise known as Modern Synthesist, and I did a video a while back about Patreon, but if you watch that video, the audio was garbage. So much so that my buddies over at Between the Bolter and me are like, you need to buy a proper mic stand, you need to get your shit together because this trash here, it's not okay. In that video, I talked about how I feel about Hobby Patreon, and just want to set the record straight because you may or may not know I now have a Hobby Patreon, and people are like, Hobby Patreon? You can't have a Hobby Patreon, you hate Hobby Patreon. And I was like, well, I didn't say I hate Hobby Patreon. I just said I have some strong beliefs about it. So I'm guessing the best way to review how I feel about Hobby Patreon is to review this story post that I posted over on Instagram a while back. So I started off with, please, for the love of God, no more Hobby Patreons. We all learned this shit for free from the previous generation. You don't get to charge the next generation for it. If we put all the knowledge given freely behind a paywall, what are we doing to the next generation? To the 12-year-olds getting into the hobby that are told, if you want to get good, these are the Patreons, coffees, and Twitches you need to pay for. The note that I made is that the content should come first. That however many folks seem to create their Patreon first and then say, oh, don't worry, I'm going to do lots of tutorials and stuff once you give me your money. But the thing I want to note is that creating content is hard. It takes work. And if you're thinking of creating a Hobby Patreon, perhaps you should do that work first and make sure you like doing it before you ask people to pay you for it. Because I do that work. It's annoying, it uses up time I could instead spend on models, but when that work is done, I don't put my videos up behind a paywall. I can sculpt because people, mostly Hydra, took the time to teach me. These people never asked me to pay them, so I don't feel right turning around and charging others to learn. Pretty straightforward. I can sculpt also because I put in time to learn. And some argue I should be paid for that time, and the time I take to teach others. Sure, but this hobby is already expensive enough, especially now, and the green stuff learning curve is already so frustrating. As I was coming up through this hobby, I got a lot of free advice. I feel a debt of gratitude to those people who taught me for free, so I teach others for free. Personal choice, you make yours. But when you do, consider this. How many times has someone in the hobby taught you something or given you a helpful tip? And how many of those people have you ever directly paid for their knowledge? So my approach is that I get to charge people for hobby advice as frequently as I had to pay for it while growing. And the reality is that I didn't have to pay very much for my hobby advice. That I got extremely lucky where, like I said, generous people like Hydra told me how to sculpt and gave me all kinds of tips and pointers. I got free tutorials on the internet that like I found on YouTube, or tips through like Back and White Dwarf when they used to tell you stuff. And just from like my own experience. And sure, like I said, some people think that they need to get paid for that experience, but that's not how I want to do things. So for years now, I've been creating sculpting tutorials, posting them for free on YouTube. Many people have told me how helpful that is for them. That's not going to change now that I have a Hobby Patreon. Those are going to keep going up on YouTube for free, and people can keep learning how to sculpt. The key thing that I wanted to reiterate there is that my belief is that you should create the content first. And once the content speaks to an audience, then be like, hey, cool, people like this. Try to roll out a Patreon. Don't create a Hobby Patreon first and then be like, I'm going to make you amazing content. You haven't seen any of it yet, but it's going to be great. I started writing sculpting tutorials about 10 years ago on my blog, created my first how to sculpt videos 5 years ago, and have been giving them away for free this whole time. Everyone knows what I'm about. Everyone knows the kind of content I create. So I created my Hobby Patreon if you want to support the kind of content I create, or if you want to just keep on enjoying it for free on YouTube without contributing at all, that's fine too. Because I'm going to keep giving it away for free because I got it for free myself and don't feel great about forcing people to pay for extra stuff. But I'm going to be creating exclusive content for patrons as well. I'm going to be running some giveaways on my Patreon, so there's added bonus stuff there if you're interested in being a part of it. But if you found my sculpting tutorials helpful over the years and you think you might want to give back to that kind of content creation because it's helpful for you, now you have a way to do that on Patreon. There are no tiers. You can contribute whatever you like. You can contribute $1, $5, whatever. And every so often there's like random little giveaways that I do for my patrons, but no tiers, and just give whatever you feel. I would love it if you want to support me on Patreon. You can find the link in the description below. Look forward to seeing some cool new stuff on there. Thanks for watching this video. Please like, comment, and subscribe. And in the comment section, let me know how you feel about Hobby Patreons. And I'll talk to you next time.